the materials and the tools and things that are not easily accessible in South Africa. I mean, I often try and look for oil drums, and it's not easy to find a decent oil drum, or even to find an oil drum with the correct specifications to make the instrument. They're very scarce here.
Huh. Okay, I know there's some few people in here. We're gonna try and see what we can do. I know a few people, and I will make some phone calls and see if there's a way we can make something happen.
That would be great.
Yeah, I can't promise anything, but we'll see.
There's really a lot of potential in the country.
Yeah, there is. And I've been looking at a lot of the steel pans in South Africa, and they all are amazing. They all who knew?
Yeah, it warms my heart because it's a lot of the bands are revolving around education and the kids, and most of the bands are inclusive of all the kids that are learning music. So that's what most of the steel bands are doing.
Yeah. Sashal has a question. Does a school in South Africa have any channels for collaborations? This is something I think I'd be interested in and give my interest in performing / teaching and cultural exchange.
When you say collaborations, do you mean like exchange programs? I'm not sure.
Maybe, or even she can come down and maybe
absolutely
teach and give her side, and I don't know, maybe work with your son, because he's also an arranger.
I can assure you, any school would welcome that has steel band, would welcome people with the knowledge and with experience from outside the country to come and assist. That is also a challenge that a lot of the schools who have steel bands face. And when I started, one of the big problems was that the educators who were put in charge of teaching the bands had no knowledge of arranging. They had no knowledge of how to teach bands. And part of my research during my varsity masters and also during my Bachelor of Music years was to write up how we can deal with this problem. So how to educate the tutors or the mentors and show them the method of teaching the instrument in the country. So definitely there'd definitely be a position open for people to come and collaborate with the groups that are in South Africa.
I hope everyone is listening. There's an opportunity to go to South Africa.
And he's been here a couple of times, and he's done one-off workshops with many bands in different parts of the country.
Awesome.
But it'd be nice to have something that's very consistent, that happens regularly, even if it's annually or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Sashal said that she will reach out.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And Sashal, I'll also, you can follow I pinned their names at the bottom of the screen. So make sure you follow them, reach out, and yeah, we're gonna make something happen for you guys.
Brilliant.
For sure. Is there anything else you would want to talk about? Get out there, let people know what's going on in South Africa when it comes to pan.
I was thinking. I mean, I've been anxious about this interview for a couple of weeks now. And Sia's the one who's with me around up. Now he's not even here.
I know.
And now my initial thought was to maybe explain how the instrument started in the country, like I give a detailed description of that. And then also to say what the schooling system is like and how the instrument is related to the schooling system, how that all came about. So would you like to hear that?
Yeah, of course.
So I don't know if Andrew Tracy, Professor Andrew Tracy, he's still here. He's about 87 or 88 right now. He lives in the same town or city that I am. And he was my lecturer when I was at varsity. He was the person responsible for bringing the very first instruments to South Africa. in the late 1960s, early 1970s.
Yeah.
And very interesting person to chat to. I mean, he's so knowledgeable on world music. He's an ethnomusicologist.
Okay.
Massive knowledge on African music. I think he's a multi-instrumentalist. He's a multilinguist. He speaks many different languages, but very knowledgeable, very intellectual person. And so he was involved in a South African musical or musical review that toured in South Africa, and I think they did some shows in London and also on Broadway in the 1960s, called Wait a Minute. And while they were in London, he would frequently visit a restaurant where a steel band was performing, because he was intrigued by the calypso music, of course, from Trinidad. And I think one of the pieces that they performed was a calypso. And the band that was performing at the restaurant was called La Flambeau. And he would at times, after their performances, go and fiddle on the instruments and just ask the band leader if you could try out the instruments and where they were made, how they were made, how they worked. And I think one day the cello player did not pitch, or something happened, and the band leader actually asked him to perform in the band on the cello. So that's where he got caught on the instrument, and then he purchased his first instruments, which he used in this musical. And then after that, he brought these instruments back to South Africa. He still has the original instruments. He's got a double second, he's got a tenor spider web that hangs up in the band room that he has. All the original instruments are still there. It's like a museum if you go into his barn area. And then he started his first band in the 70s. By the 80s, his daughter and Steve Laurie, the person I'd mentioned before, they started a junior group, which was essentially the kids of the band leaders that were in the senior band. And this was an adult. I think Andrew even said at one stage they were semi-professional. That's how many times they were performing across the country. And so Steve, he got hooked while he was at school playing the instrument, Steve Laurie, and got intrigued by how the instrument was made. And in fact, even as one of his science projects at school, made an instrument. And then Andrew was quite pivotal or helpful in getting him to Trinidad. I think it was in 1994. When he went over to Trinidad to perform with Renegades at Panorama, and then he also spent a couple of weeks learning the manufacturing process with the tuners in Trinidad, some of the tuners there. And then he came back and set up his own factory here in this area where I stay. And that was like 94, 95, and as I said, in 1996, he linked up with my music teacher. I was in grade 8 then. He linked up with her, and I still say unfortunately, she passed away last year. So she left quite a big legacy at the school with starting this whole group with Steve Laurie. And I credit her, because I always say if it wasn't for her, I would never have been where I am right now. I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this interview right now. I would never been introduced to the instrument had she not made the call to ask him or invite him to start the band at the school.
Right.
And so Steve then was the one who was responsible for teaching me up till my grade 12 year the solo music of steel pan. And then he left. He moved to America at the end of 2000, and then worked with Panyard initially, and I think in the late 2000s he started his own company, Pan Tuner, which is what he's running right now. But after he left South Africa, I actually then started to work full-time But the first year after I finished school, I worked full-time in the factory that he had started. And one of the other guys that were at school with me took over the business. So the two of us were working together. Unfortunately, things didn't go too well. And fortunately also, that was the time when Andrew Tracy approached me to come play in his band, which I felt very privileged. This is the oldest band in the country.
Right.
And from there sparked my interest to go and study further at varsity. And
That's awesome.
I stayed there for about 6 years. I did my bachelor's, and then I did my master's with Andrew Tracy. And after I finished, I then went back to school. I got a job, partly because the teacher who started the band, my old music teacher, was about to retire, and that opened the vacancy for me to take over from where she left. And so I took over the bands, and I also took over my job. Essentially is a music teacher, a full-time high school music teacher, where I teach theory and composition, history of music. I teach, and of course, performance and practical. Besides running the band, the band is a side thing, but I see the school sees it that way. I see it the other way. That the steel band is my first priority.
Yeah, I get it.
And so both Steve Laurie and Vivian, actually, they were instrumental in getting the education department in South Africa to accept the instrument as a solo instrument for examination purposes. And I was one of the first to actually complete